Hey everyone, welcome to the Believe Again podcast. I'm your host, Josh Robery, and I'm here with my good friend, Bryant Turner, who is a broker here in town in Birmingham. He's also a former professional football player, college football player, and just all around great guy. And I think one of the great things that is happening for me doing this podcast is getting to interview some of my friends, and you're one of those people. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and look forward to it.
Yeah. So I guess like I've done in previous episodes, I like to start with where we met. And so Bryant was actually in Canada playing football, and me, Amy, and Sophie and Gracie were walking down the street, and your father-in-law was outside with your daughter. And he said, do y'all know Bryant, my daughter's husband? And we're like, no. And he's like, he's a football player. I mean, it's like first thing out of his mouth. He's a football player. And I'm like, he is? I was like, great. And he's like, he's the one that threw the big party down, his big block party. I was like, someone threw a block party? And he's like, there's a plate on it. I was like, that must have been before we just moved here. Right. He goes, I'm gonna go get my daughter. And he ran inside and brought out Morgan. And Morgan was like, what's going on? And it was the craziest thing. And we met Morgan, and I was like, you know what, Amy, let's invite Morgan to our small group. Yeah, we're doing a small group on parenting, and we, just wanted to meet our neighbors, and thought this would be a good way to do that. And we couldn't believe it because Morgan came, right. And we were shocked, and we're like, man, Morgan's here. How about that? And then, you, I guess, eventually came back and the season was over. And we met you, and we're like, man, he's even cooler than Morgan. So how about that?
It's funny because I never heard this story until now. So I remember you guys kind of connecting in some way, and Morgan going into it because it was like a parenting small group, and which we were looking and needed at that time. So it was kind of like a blessing. But yeah, I didn't know that you guys met my father-in-law first.
Yeah, no, he was out there with Kennedy. And so Brian has become one of my closest friends here in town, and someone I spend probably the most time with. And it was really weird at first because we were texting Morgan all the time, and like you were in some of those group texts, and like we'd never even met you. Like, Morgan, come hang out at our house. And then Amy loves Morgan. So I think for us, you guys have been such a great couple because Amy really loves Morgan as much as I love you, and we feel it's mutual back. So we love hanging out with you guys. Love your family.
Same here. We look forward to it. And I feel like we're blessed on our street with great neighbors, and y'all being one of them. And, still to today, we talk about stuff deeper that we're going to probably get in on the podcast.
Yes, definitely.
I can't, I feel like I'm not comfortable enough to talk about with other people in the neighborhood. So,
well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And one of the ways that, we've gotten to know each other is through small groups. So we did another small group at Starbucks. We did a coffee. What do we call it? We called it I
cannot remember. No, was that Starbucks?
I remember the coffee small group we did. It's kind of like the coffee crew. The coffee crew. We call it the coffee crew.
Yeah.
So stupid. But coffee crew. And I invited you to come, and you came one day, and you shared part of your story with me that I never heard about. I knew that you had played football, obviously, and you probably could have played a little bit longer than you did, but you wanted to be with your family. And but I didn't hear how it all got started, and I thought that would be a good thing to share with everyone on the podcast, because this podcast is about believing again, believing in your dreams. And you had a dream that people kind of told you not to pursue,
right?
And I think it's really ironic how it all came together. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
So basically, my dream was always, I've always played football since I was a young age. I think I started literally 7 or 8 years old. My dream always, honestly, had just been the best I can be at that level that I was playing at. When I was 7 years old, I want to be the best 7-year-old. When I was in high school, I want to be the best high school. Defensive end is a position I played. Went to college, and I want to be the best, college defensive end in my mind. Went to UAB here in Birmingham, not a great football school at the time. We're much better now, much better facilities, much better coaches, and players. However, we weren't the best. I think out of my 4 years there, we won 5 games in the season. That was the most we had won in the season. Anyway, I always had the dream of like, okay, I feel like I'm a decent player. I feel like I can maybe go to another level, personally. And it's funny, I had told you this story. So I remember kind of trying to pursue that, which was weird for me because I came out during the lockout year of the NFL. This was 2010, I think. Basically, if you didn't get drafted, you didn't know what was going to happen. It was no communication from the teams to the players. So it was kind of a very awkward time to come out of, college and try to go to the pros. Anyway, I did not end up getting drafted, but I was still trying to work on it. So basically, I remember being in my football facility, kind of making a highlight tape, trying to get my name out, send it out, and kind of had hired an agent on the side, through myself basically. And I remember my coach coming in like, what are you doing in here? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? As my head coach saying, what are you doing? And
that's gotta be a weird feeling. You're in there believing in yourself. And he's like, what, like, how dare you almost? Like, it was, how dare you think that you could go to the next level?
Yeah, it was very shocking, for him. And it's funny because I kind of knew he felt that way or just got that vibe because I was secretly kind of doing stuff, behind the scenes. Anyway, it was kind of an eye-opening thing, but basically I was pursuing being a collegiate strength coach, and and he knew about that. And actually was kind of helping me with that. But, on the backside, I still feel like I could play at the next level. And I was kind of pursuing that on the back end by myself personally. So that happened, and it was kind of, discouraging, but still, moving forward. Anyway, in the collegiate strength coach, where you have to go to a big conference they do every year, you basically have to take a written exam and you have to actually perform lifts and describe your workout. Is very in-depth, way more in-depth than you would ever think for a strength coach. Anyway, I think it was in St. Louis, Missouri. I ended up failing my strength coach test that day. It was down. It was hurting, because this was my plan. It was my 1A, I guess, because 1B was pro athlete, 1A was this is the main thing. And it was like, I failed it, I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Literally the next day, I got a call from the Canadian Football League and sent over a contract to sign. I had done a couple workouts, but didn't think much of it. It was kind of one of those workouts where everybody's going to do it, Had done a couple works, didn't know if it would go anywhere. But, looking back, I look at it as, this plan I have for myself, God had some plan better, So I thought that was amazing because they go from being down and discouraged one day to literally signing the contract the next day in the hotel in St. Louis, and
the same room that they told you it wasn't going to work out.
Basically, yes. Yeah, the same room, same place, it was a huge thing. Like they literally, I can't remember, they faxed it. They faxed the contract over to the hotel. I ended up signing and faxing it back or something like that. But it was, that was very eye-opening. So you go from being basically crying to being the happiest person in the world the next day. So it was, it was just funny how that worked out, and ended up having a 7-year professional, career in Canada.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I mean, not to brag, but end up being all-star on multiple all-star teams, and the only all-star on one team out. 1 year, I was the only all-star on the team, which never happens.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was, that come from, I don't know, it's just amazing how it go in such a different direction than what you expect.
That's dramatically different.
Right.
There's several layers that I think we could just spend this whole time just talking about that one story. Right. I think there's so many layers to it. One being, how important the voices are in our life. I listened to a podcast on the Pastors Collective, Pastor Greg Surratt, and the guest, Sharon Miller, was saying basically that, one of the ways that she's learned through doctorate study that the call of God is verified on people's lives is through the voices of people in their life.
Right.
That's how the call of God is verified on people's life. And I think, the voices that we hear, they can become cheerleaders, or they can become that cheer us on, and they can also become ghosts that intimidate us from ever even going forward. And even as we're going forward, we continue to hear those ghosts, and I think this part of my story has been learning to discern which are the ghosts and which one's the Holy Ghost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think there's this powerful scene in the movie A Beautiful Mind, which is about the great economist Nash. I can't remember his first name, something Nash, and Dr. Nash. And he was, developed some principles that basically we use in everyday life that people aren't aware of, but he was schizophrenic. And when he started taking his medicine, his brilliant mind stopped working.
Right.
And so he wasn't hearing the voices, but his mind also wasn't able to do what God had created him to do. And so he stops taking his medicine, and the movie documents, what happens in his life. But towards the end, spoiler, if you haven't seen it, just turn off now, come back in 30 seconds. But at the end of the movie, he's sitting on a bench, and they're saying, how's life now that you no longer hear those voices, these ghosts is what I'm calling them. And he says, I've never stopped hearing them. I've just learned to know who they are and where they belong. And I think like that coach, like, hey, what are you doing in here? You got to realize that, that what that is and where that belongs. It belongs in the trash.
Right.
That's not the Holy Ghost. That's not God encouraging you along. And I've had voices like that. I've had, I remember one of the first times I said publicly, and I say publicly, it was just 3 people in the room, me and 2 other people, staff members at the church I was at. I said I wanted to write a book one day. And I remember one of the people in the room said, why would you write a book? And that that was like a dart. I had shared something that was the closest thing to my heart, that I wanted to write a book one day. And they're like, of all people, why would you write a book? And that scared me. And I didn't write probably for 2 years after that.
Right.
And people kept trying to tell me, you're a good writer. You're a good writer. You should write. You should write a blog. You should talk about what you're experiencing. In that season I spent before coming to ARC, working outside of ministry, I was like, I just don't think I'm good enough. I just don't think I'm good enough. And luckily for me, I had some people like my wife, my friend Aaron Vogel, who's also going to be on this podcast, my friend Jordan Joplin, Michael Smith, who works at ARC. People just kept telling me, you're good enough. Right. And I did. And so I think that's an important part of the story as well, just learning to discern the ghost.
Right.
Any other experiences like that with those type of voices, or how's that impacted you?
I mean, I feel like I honestly don't get too many of those, I have them in the past, but lately it's been more of a good voice of, where are you serious? Like you say something to me that, is good in my point. And it honestly kind of gives me a boost. Like, I can't believe that person believes that about me, or either I'm that good or I will be that good, or, something. It's been encouraging. I guess it's the people I surround myself with too, but, so I've been getting a lot of good ghost voices lately.
Cheerleaders.
Cheerleaders, which honestly help, it plays a major role, because it's, I hear stuff that I almost don't believe, but I'm like, but it make me want to believe it just because that person believes it in me. You know what I mean? And I feel like just lately, over the last 3 or 4 years, that has played a huge impact in my life of believing better of myself than what I truly, what I feel, just because of the people surrounded about it.
Well, and I think everyone listening, to this podcast, you have a choice. You can be someone's cheerleader, and you can help them reach something they never would have on their own.
Right.
Or you could be someone that is that negative person. And I felt like for a long time, when someone would share their dream with me, I would always be like, come on now, I would want to show them what they're doing wrong. And really, I was thinking it was helping them. But then I realized, there's so many critical voices out there that they don't need my criticism. What people need is my encouragement. And so, I decided to turn that around, and I just decided that I was going to build people up from now on.
Right.
And I was going to try to, if they were going to spend 5 minutes with me, that it's going to be me asking them about themselves and encourage them to fulfill their dreams. And I think one of the things that I've learned in the past 10 years is that God puts great things in our hearts, but a lot of people are scared to follow it, and they almost feel like it's wrong. But I believe God wants us to follow our hearts. But people say, well, your heart's exceedingly wicked and deceitful, well, that's the unredeemed heart. The Bible says that when God saves us, takes out our stony heart, gives a heart of flesh, it could be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. The Psalm says in Psalm 37 that God gives us the desires of our heart. So I believe a redeemed heart gets blamed for a lot of bad things. It has nothing to do with the heart, it has more to do with our flesh or sinful nature. But the actual core of who we are, God put some great things in us, and God's put great things in you. And I think that's why, we're seeing, you accomplish, a 7-year pro career is pretty rare. The average, do you know what the average football player career is?
I would think 2 to 3.
I think average. That's what it is. Yeah. So that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And so another part of your story too, so you got the coach walking in,
right,
and then you had almost like a substitute that you almost settled for. And I think a lot of times, people, they have a dream, but they're too intimidated for that. So they kind of try to find something connected to that dream, and they try to, and sometimes that doesn't go right.
Right.
And it's tempted to settle, it's almost like you got to be willing to give God your Isaac. You got to be willing to put that dream on the altar, totally up to him. So it's not selfish ambition, but a lot of times he wants to resurrect that dream in your life. Do you see it like that it was maybe like a little bit of a substitute? Or
I definitely do. And the main reason is because since I played football, I have no want to be a strength coach anymore. It's the least of, what I want, just a coach in general. And, I'm a big family guy, and coaches, they can be family people, but they're working, 95% of the time. Don't get to see their family much. The job security is crazy. You're moving all over the place, so that part, now that I've had time to actually think about it, I'm like, thank God I didn't go that route, because that's not the way I envisioned my life personally. So it definitely was a substitute that, now I look back and know it, because I don't have any ambition to go down that route anymore, for sure.
Well, so you were able to go and play football, and we would see you. I think every now and then you would come back. I guess I must have had a break or something.
Yeah, 6 months on, 6 months off.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And then I remember you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my real estate license." I was like, "Okay." Yeah. I was like, everybody I know has a real estate license, it seems like. And I was like, and not to be a ghost in your life, but I was like, we'll see how this goes. Former football player becomes a real estate agent.
Right.
And so, you asked for, you started sending me information, and, I kind of watched the beginning, really formation of your career. Yeah. You're like, "Hey, I sold a house." Like, great. And then I noticed signs started popping up on our street, and I think you've sold like every house on our street except for 2. And I'm just like, okay, Bryant is really good at his job. And then I follow you on social media, and I'm seeing you like top agent in the area for ARC, which is funny. We both work at ARC. Yeah. People all the time, Birmingham, want to know if I work for you. Right. When I say ARC, I'm like, no, we're actually this other, just global brand exactly. That's in town. Exactly. But, you were really, you're thriving in this season. And I think that there was a point where you had to choose family over football, and you came home, and I admire you so much for that. Can you maybe talk to the listeners, like, what led you into that decision? How scary was that, saying, "Hey, I'm trying something totally new"? Because, did you even really have a lot of real estate contacts?
I didn't. So basically it was such a small world. So about 2 years before I stopped playing football, I knew it. I was one of the brighter players that's like, I got 2 years left. Or, I feel like I could stay at the decently top of my game for another 2 years. After that, it was going to be, we're going to see, what happened. But I kind of had started looking at like, all right, what do I want to do afterwards? And literally right at the time I started thinking about this, about 2 years before I retired, I met this guy who basically, we started talking football. I always get the size. What are you? You must play sport, blah, blah, blah. Started talking football. Then he led to saying, I'm in real estate. It will probably correlate over good. It's competitive, blah, 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 kind of compared it to football. And, it kind of intrigued me because, for one, you're not clocking in and clocking out, which a lot of football players, probably 95%, not even football players, professional athletes, it's hard to go from basically you control your own destiny by what you do on the field to now I have to clock in and clock out every day at this time. You know what I mean? And kind of report. And we're real big on believing in ourselves and kind of controlling our own destiny. So it's hard to just do a regular 9-to-5 job afterwards anyway. What I've noticed a lot. Anyway, he kind of talked me into that. And basically, literally in that conversation, I think within a month or 2, I had my real estate license. I started the class like next week. And it's, kind of got it. And as soon as I got my license, I went back to play. But it was, that's how I kind of got into it, I guess. Basically, it came down to, all right, I really want to do this. I was 6 months on, 6 months off. My wife is basically a stay-at-home mom for 6 months out of the year now with 2 kids. We see each other one weekend out of every month. It was getting hard. The rent over there, the rent was double my mortgage in our old house, basically, what I was paying when I was playing in Vancouver. And it don't even start to add up anymore. So now you're away from your family. You're paying, the expenses are high. It's a CFL, which we call cash flow low league. So you're not getting played like the NFL. So it's kind of like, hey, dang, is this even worth it? At the time. So that's kind of helped the transition over. And honestly, the transition was tough. It took faith to do, because it is not easy going from, a steady, decent paycheck to no paycheck at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which for any job, for anybody. So that was kind of the transition of, going from football to real estate. But so far it worked out great. Did I explain on everything that?
Yeah, I think so. He's like, did I do a good job on the interview? So no, I think so. I think what I like about that story is that you had a dream that people told you that, hey, you have no business thinking that you're capable of that.
Right.
But you believed it within yourself and you achieved the dream, but then you didn't put the dream ahead of your family. And I think that's two stories that people need to hear. One is that, you have to find the resources in God and within yourself to pursue your dream. You can't wait for someone to tell you, that you're born for this and I'm going to make an easy path for you. You got to fight for something,
Right.
At the same time with that, we have a choice to be a voice of encouragement or discouragement to people. And I say, hey, people got enough critics. Why don't we just celebrate them a little bit? And who cares if they ever do it or not? Why be that guy? I don't want to be the guy that someone says, they said I would never play football or I would never write a book and I did it. Like, I don't want to be someone's motivation in that way. And like,
And I personally, you said that earlier and I was thinking like, man, I need to work on that. Cause I don't, and this is the thing I'm thinking of.
I wanted to tell you that, but I didn't want to criticize you. No, I'm just kidding.
I got a friend right now. He got big plans, and I'm not like, hey, you can't do those plans, but I'm the guy that's like, all right, if these are your plans, what's the steps? How are we gonna get this done? So I think I'm big on kind of, I guess I help to motivate, but I'm like, you ain't the guy. I ain't the guy you want to talk to for, you know what I mean? Motivation.
Maybe that's why you failed your strength coach test.
I'm like, all right, this is the plan. Yeah.
You don't know what you get out of this gym. You don't to be here.
Exactly. I'm just like, how are we going to get to that point? You want to do this? How are we going to do this? I'm not just going to say, yeah, you can do it. Cheer you on. I'm going to ask you, what are your steps you're taking? So I guess, and I honestly got to be better about that, because you said in real estate, when I mentioned, I had a friend, he called me and apologized maybe about 3 months ago. A close friend of mine, he was at my daughter's birthday party just so that, last month. Anyway, when I called him telling real estate, it wasn't like that ghost that was like, I don't know about that. He was like, are you serious? What are you doing? Like, kind of like your story on writing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, no, I don't think that's it, man. I think you should do coaching and I think you'd be a great coach. And I'm like, that's not really the direction I want to go. Anyway, real estate's been very successful so far. And he called me back like literally 2 months ago. And I've been talking to him, I've been in real estate 5 years.
Yeah.
So imagine I talk to this guy at least once a month. And it took him to 2 months ago to tell me, hey, I just wanted to apologize. I remember when you first told me this, it wasn't, and I guess it's hard to believe because everybody gets into real estate. Everybody that, they got their real estate license. Because it's so easy to get a real estate license. And it's just, the hard part come after the license, you know what I mean? So a lot of people fall out between that license and that first 6 months.
You told me that.
Yeah.
What I think is also interesting about your story is how much what you do. Two things. One is like you are so involved in the community. Like it's like you've taken your platform for being a professional athlete as well as what you do with real estate. And like I'm asking you to toot your own horn here, which you're not good at. But like you were even doing that when you threw a block party for the neighborhood, know. But I see you always in the community being involved, and I mean that is such a great witness for Jesus and the kingdom of God. But it's also good business as well.
It is,
and maybe can you talk about that a little bit? I don't know if that's enough for you to.
I mean, sure. Honestly, I sell. We technically sell homes, but the way you get business is you sell yourself. You know what I mean? And honestly, I try to be wide open with who I am. I always tell people I'm an open book. You want to talk to me about personal. I'm an open book personally. I try to sell whatever we do. We take our daughters to the park. You'll see me post that online because that's what I'm doing that day. If we go out to eat, I might post a picture of our food. Me and my wife just took a trip this weekend. I post a picture of us on the trip, and it's just, I'm real big on just being authentic and just selling myself. And while I get to sell myself and be authentic and meet friends, this bring back business, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of works perfectly for me, you know. I thought about this. We had a birthday party for Zoe not too long ago, and half the people are clients. You know what I mean? They're friends, but they're clients, and it's literally just because, hey, I get to be me and just express who I am and show who I am every day. And you know, they kind of like it or they don't. Most people like it, and they'll call me to help sell a house. You know
what I don't see you do is I don't see you constantly posting on Facebook about selling houses.
Right. And I try to separate the two. So, you know, I got the business page and the personal page, and I tried my best not to put too much on the personal page about selling houses.
Yeah. I mean, it's what you do for a living, so you expect some of it, but sometimes I feel like, you know, you got to block your real estate friends or you're just going to get house offers all day long on your feed, you know?
Exactly.
But not only, I mean, so I see you serving, you know, doing things, donating food to the teachers at school,
right.
Doing things in the community. If there's some type of ceremony happening, it's like, man, I'm looking and there's Bryant again on there. Mm-hmm. But it's also like caused you to be better connected with football in a lot of ways because you're successful in the community. You've been asked to help out at UAB, and you know, you're bringing people to the games in that culture. Maybe talk a little bit about how it's open doors should be continue to stay connected to football.
Yeah. So the company I work with is ARC, you know, ARC, and it stands for a relationship company, which I kind of feel like go over to this ARC, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're about.
But you know, I feel like we got a great leader who started the company. His name is Tommy Brigham. Great guy. You know what I mean? He's just an all around great guy. Being at UAB, he did a lot to help the football program come back. So basically, when I stopped playing and I had my real estate license, I was working out at UAB doing my season or off season. Everybody kept saying, Tommy Brigham, you need to go holler at Tommy Brigham. Anyway, he definitely helped to mold me, you know, who I am. And not just who I am, it's just our company is it's a faith-based, you know, he's just such a genuine person that it rubs off to make our company huge. And just, you know, I'm going to stop talking about myself for a second and talking about him because I feel like it's important. Tommy started the biggest company, their Realty South in Alabama. He started and sold it to Berkshire Hathaway, and then he started ARC after that. Well, they're the two biggest companies in Alabama right now, started by the same person. You know what I mean? And it just shows you that his character is what's on these companies, not really the numbers and stuff. You know, when he sold the company, he was like, they started counting pencils and counting how much paper was printed, and it wasn't big on what he believed in, which was a relationship company. That's how ARC got started. So, and I say that because Tommy is somebody who definitely, he got me, the things that come outside of real estate was, you know, through our company was major, like being on the board for UAB Athletics. You know, I get to sit on that board, and I think I'm the youngest person on that board, you know, probably brokest too, honestly. But anyway, it's just amazing to be in these rooms and get to, you know, share what I feel will help the football program to become, you know, and not only the football program, but the city, you know, the bigger influence basically. So, you know, I feel like I'm learning all of this stuff from just the people I'm around. Like you said, I told you earlier, I feel like I surround myself with great people, and I'm learning to do that and other things. You know, my wife's a school teacher in our neighborhood. Of course, I would love to feed the teachers anytime I think this is going to be the third year in a row that for Thanksgiving, they're going to get fed. I try to bring them coffee every other month or something like that. And it's just major because I get to, I don't know, love on these people because I know how teachers, I know what they go through, you know, and it's just a genuine thing. Like I feel for teachers, you know what I mean? So I know teachers ain't paid enough. I mean, you know, I know the stress that's
you
put
cashed
on
in
them.
the check.
Yeah, exactly. So I completely, and you know, you just kind of, I feel like I pick up from people around me that are great people, and I, you know, get to learn and apply that in my, you know, neck of the woods, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, you're doing a great job with that. And, you know, as we kind of wrap up here, I do want to, we don't have the time I want to give this topic. So I kind of almost wonder if we should get into it, but I do want to mention one thing. And you and I, how did we end up at Waffle House that one night? Do you remember that?
Coming from UAB game.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
We went to UAB game with another client that he's a pastor.
And a friend.
Yeah. And so we had a good time there. And, you know, we were driving back, and I guess we started talking about things because your friend is probably a little bit more of a liberal leaning, moderate politically friend.
Yeah.
And so I guess it started causing us to talk about some things. And we started talking about race and the election. It was right before the election.
Yep.
And so we ended up going over to Waffle House. And like, what I love is that we stayed up all night, drinking coffee, eating waffles. But since then, we've said we need to have another Waffle House talk.
Exactly.
We need to have another Waffle House talk.
Yeah.
Because the Waffle House, it gets real.
Exactly.
And
especially at 11 o'clock at night
yeah.
or 12, whatever it was.
Yeah. I mean, it might as well have been 4 a.m. for me. I go to bed at like 9:30 every night. So,
right.
You know, what was so, and we don't have time to unpack all that I want to here with this, but I want to say what I love about that conversation was you challenged me so much in what I believe and what I thought should happen for our country, you know, and I had this space in relationship with you that I could challenge you with what you believe, even though I probably didn't change your mind at all about anything, but
you felt comfortable being able, and I think that's the big thing I try to give, like whatever your stance is, I want you to feel comfortable telling me that. Yeah.
And so you and I see eye to eye on a lot of things, fortunately, and that's why we're able to be friends. But there were some things during that time that we did not see eye to eye on. And what was happening is I had a friend in my life that was literally my neighbor, and you could help me see a different part of our country. And I guess I will say one thing that happened in 2020 was we were on the phone. We were talking about race, and I mentioned people getting pulled over by police. And I said to you, one of the most insensitive things probably, I was like, I've gotten pulled over by the police when I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, what's the big deal? You know? Right. And when you told me that you were pulled over in our little town of Chelsea, doing your job, showing a house, I broke down and started crying. And then you were crying, which caused me to cry more. And I just like, it rocked my world, and it changed me because someone I cared about and knew was experiencing racism. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You drive a nice car, you're well dressed, you're doing your job, you're in you're half a mile from your house. Yeah. And an off-duty police officer literally chased you down and pulled you over. Right. And I think like the only reason why my perspective was able to be changed by that is because I gave room in my life for someone that looked differently than me, had different experiences. Right. And because I cared about you, when you said what happened to you, I couldn't deny that it was happening. Right. And it changed me.
And honestly, that was the biggest thing I want to get across with my post I put up in 2020, because I think Chelsea's 3% Black. I think the census just came out. It's 3% Black. So, for years on our street, I think I was the only Black person between the first 3 streets. Yep. And, so anyway, I say that to say, we go to a restaurant, we eat out twice a week, and I'm the only Black person in the restaurant. So anyway, I'm in this culture where I'm the Black guy that people know, and people normally respect me because they know me, they know my family, they know my wife, they know my kids, they know who I am. So they don't see me as, and I'm putting up quotation marks, thugs that they see on TV. Mm-hmm. They see me as Bryant Turner. He's a great guy. He's a friendly guy. I love that guy. So I wanted to put up this post to say, hey, even this guy who you guys know it's happening to.
You didn't want to post it. You told me that you've been thinking this for a while. It's like, I don't want to be the complaining guy.
Exactly. I didn't want to be the angry.
And I told you, if they don't listen to you, they don't listen to anybody. Right. Please share your thoughts.
You're right. And so I was like, all right, let me show them that it's not just this guy that they see on TV, it's the guy that they know and they're friends with and they love also. You know what I mean? So they can see that, hey, it is something going on because he gets treated the same way that this guy gets treated, Yeah. And I think that was the biggest thing I tried to share with that post. And it worked, what I mean? It went viral. It went really good. And the calls I was getting, man, I talked to this lady for about an hour I had never met in my life. Mm-hmm. She read the post and she was like, look, I work with some Black people, but I'm scared to have this conversation. I got your number on Facebook and we talked for an hour and it was a great conversation. I can't think of that lady name for the life of me, but just, things like that was happening that made a huge deal. And I feel like, 2020 was a year to talk about this stuff. And, honestly, it still need to be an ongoing conversation. And, right now as a Black guy, it's hard for me to bring it up because it's like, oh, he's bringing up the past. I don't want people to think that. Yeah. I just want the ongoing conversation to continue to happen so we can make a change, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jimmy Rollins said something in the past year that has really stuck with me. He says that Christians know that we should love our neighbors as ourselves, but we choose who our neighbors are. And I think people need to choose some new neighbors. You know, I think we need to choose some neighbors that think differently than us, that believe differently than us, that look differently than us, and hear what they have to say and see that, hey, these people love their family. They're doing the best they can. They've been dealt a different hand, and that's caused the way that they view the world. And we need to give some credence to that. And man, you've been such a help to me in so many ways, just your friendship. But I think in 2020, the way that you have helped me see the race issue was huge. And I just want to thank you for being a friend that I could process with. And hopefully I've been that same friend for you.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I give you a call or shoot you a text. When I want to make sure I'm not crazy.
So, you know, and I think, you know, we're better off for it. And I hope, you know, people could take from this to be that friend for someone else, be an encouragement, open yourself up to people who may be a little bit different than you. And I think you'll be better off. And so anyway, this interview is not as long as I wanted it to go, but I want to thank you for doing this episode with me.
No problem.
And I think you already bought my book, so I can't give it to you, but I'm going to give you, you and Morgan, some Believe Again merch, shirts and hats. And my friend Aaron Vogel, who owns Cool Kids Coffee, is going to also give you a bag of coffee.
Okay.
So, yep. Thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, John.
Any last words you want to say?
I'm trying to think. I had some on my mind earlier that I was like, oh, we need to. Oh, okay. I know what I want to share. All right. We talked about going to Canada and playing football, and, you know, looking back and, you know, anyway, I was pulled up there, and I just want to tell you how things started to fall, which is not just, you know, coincidental, but basically I was just going to FCA meetings. We meet once a week, something like that. Just sitting in the rooms. Next thing you know, the FCA leader is like, hey, you can't speak to this church, blah, blah, blah. Can you speak to these kids? And I had maybe over 30 engagements of, you know, speaking the gospel to kids.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, in Canada. You know what I mean? Which I had never thought that would be me, and never felt like I would be that guy. And it just happened. You know, it was like, I'm just sitting here. Like, you know what I mean? I'm literally just sitting in the meeting. Now I'm being pulled to these churches, talking to these kids, and, you know, in different places. And I just thought that was an amazing thing, because I never thought that would be me personally. But you know, it was that way for a reason. So that's something I did want to share when we were talking about that earlier enough.
Yeah,
to mention it. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll be surprised at what God will do to us if we just surrender and put things in His hands, and are just. I think sometimes we look at we want to produce results, but what God wants us to produce is obedience. And I think you did that first, and so you got the results.
Right.
You good man. Thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you, man.
All right, man.
Appreciate it.
See ya. I want to thank Bryant Turner for joining us on our podcast today. I appreciate him and his vulnerability. You can find out more about Bryant and follow him at @Blitz_Turner on Instagram. Also want to thank our sponsors, Yellow Box and Cool Kids Coffee. Yellow Box offers great digital marketing, branding, website support for churches and nonprofits and even businesses. You can find out more about them at yellowbox.co. And also Cool Kids Coffee. Every guest on our podcast gets a free bag of Cool Kids Coffee. This is a great coffee to enjoy. It also benefits children in the foster care system. You can find out more about Cool Kids Coffee at coolkidscoffee.com. And also, every guest has gotten a copy of my book, Believe Again. You can find out more about Believe Again at believeagain.co. There's a spot there for you to find out about the book. That's also where you can read blogs from me and people who've been on the podcast, as well as others. And you can also find out about other episodes from the Believe Again podcast. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.